Now I'm going to show you how easy it is to etch a glass cookie jar using one of the sayings and names from my A Mother's Cookie Jar bundle. I got this glass Anchor Hawking cookie jar at Walmart. So we're going to use that. I'm going to put the lid aside. We just need the base. And I usually would do this near a sink if I was just doing it on my own because I need access to water. But instead, I just brought a bowl of water. So you can do it either way. And then I have found using a towel, an older one that you don't want anything, like if something were to spill on it, it wouldn't matter. Works great to secure anything that's round, whether it's a tumbler, a jar, whatever it is you're working with. So that is the first thing. Then we need to decide how big we want the design to be. So I always start by measuring the longer edge. So it's about 5 1/4, but you don't want the design going from top to bottom. You want it kind of in the center. So I'm going to say that a 3.5 inch tall is about as high as I want it to go. And then I'm also going to look sideways. I would say 3.5 to 4 inches wide is about as wide as I would want it to go so that you're going to be able to read it all when you're looking straight on at it. So then you're going to go to your Cricut or your Silhouette or your Scan and Cut. You're going to pick your designs, pick a saying and a name. You're going to set it up and cut it to the size that you need for your jar. And you'll see better how I have this cut when we weed it, but you want to make sure you have more on the top and bottom than you need and more on the sides, because we're basically making a stencil and we need extra. Now I'm going to use just some rubbing alcohol on a tissue to clean the glass surface before we do anything. And you want to do that if you're using vinyl, if you're etching, and we need this vinyl to stick really nicely and not have any spots that bubble up, because if it's not attached well, your etching cream is going to go under and your edges are going to bleed. When you're making a stencil for etching, you're going to weed it in the opposite way that you would if you were going to put vinyl on it. So you're basically going to take out the areas that you want to be etched into the glass. So you're exposing the part that you're going to etch and leaving the vinyl where you don't want etching, where you want the glass to remain clear. And when you're choosing a design for etching, you want to choose something a little bit chunkier. So this bundle has some of the words in 2 different ways. So it has them where they're solid like this. And then it also has what's called an inline font, where you'll see the design on the outside and then the center will look different. That's going to be a little harder to etch. So I always choose a more bold, chunky design for etching. If the lines get too thin and too intricate, you have more problems. Okay, now that I have that all weeded, you can see what I mean, where the size is larger than what we need, because then we're not going to have to tape it quite as much. All right, now to get the vinyl onto the glass, we need to use transfer tape that is going to put this front of the vinyl onto the sticky. We'll take that off and we'll put it on there if you're kind of new to these projects. So this transfer tape that I am using comes with lines on it that if you put it onto your vinyl where the lines are lined up with your text, it makes it easier to get it straight onto whatever you're putting it onto. So it's a lot of ontos. Let's give that a try. So I'm doing my best to get that pretty lined up with the text. And then you're going to take your tool and rub over it to get the transfer tape adhered to the vinyl. Now you're going to flip this over and you're going to gently and slowly pull back the backing of the vinyl. And I do it slowly and I do it in an angle so that I can make sure none of these little centers are staying attached to this backing paper. That's the goal of the transfer tape, is to keep everything put together, but to get that backing off. Oh, that's sticky. Okay. So now we're gonna come back to our jar, and we can use these lines to help line it up, you know, have this pretty lined up with the bottom. And then I'm just going to press that down with my hands. Where the jar starts to curve a little bit, you'll see the vinyl doesn't go as evenly. And up here, it just doesn't even matter. That's just to protect the top glass. So I first do it with my fingers, and then we're going to go back with this tool. This one came with the transfer tape, and I like it because it's got kind of a soft edge to it. So you don't like bang up against the edge of that vinyl, these smaller vinyl pieces as much. So now the goal here is to get the vinyl to stick to the glass more than it is stuck to the transfer tape, because next step, we gotta get that tape off. So again, I'm just gonna do this gently, slowly, and at an angle. All right, that's working great. And I put it back on here because I'm going to do another project soon, and sometimes you can use this transfer tape more than once. Okay, so now because we're going to be putting an etching cream on here, we need to make sure there's no little bubbles and that every edge is stuck down as well as humanly possible before we apply that cream. So you want to be looking for any little air bubbles. There's one right there. And press those down. And then a trick I like to use is to use a hairdryer. So we're going to put the hairdryer on warm at a low heat setting, and just gently go over. And what it's going to do is it's going to heat that vinyl a little bit, and it's going to help you really get these edges down. Like I have a little dot right there of air, just doesn't want to totally stick, but heating it is going to help. All right, so you just do that very quickly. If you heat it too much, you might create some problems. But just really take your time on this step and get this as secure as possible. Because if you go quickly on this step and don't get all these edges down, you're going to have a little bit of bleeding and not as crisp of edges as you're going to want when you do your etching. Okay, then you want to follow these instructions for whatever etching cream you're going to be using. I'm using Armor Etch. You want to do it in a ventilated area. You want to shake it. If you're using a kind of glass that you haven't tried before, do a little spot on the bottom to make sure that it's going to work. I have used this brand before, so I know that it's going to etch nicely. And then I just have a little metal painter's spatula that I like to use to put the etching cream on. So you're just going to gently dab it on all of the exposed glass that you want etched. Now on their website, I believe they say to leave this on for 1 minute, but I usually leave it on longer. The longer you leave it, the more the glass will be etched. So I usually leave it on for 5 to 10 minutes. Now, if you've used a scrap piece of vinyl and you don't have as much vinyl all the way around that's going to protect the rest of your glass or your jar or whatever you're etching from this etching cream, then you would just add masking tape around it as well. You just want to make sure none of this touches any glass that you don't want etched, because it will affect the glass within seconds. Okay, now we're going to leave that for 10 minutes and then we'll come back. The etching cream has been on there for 10 minutes, and I'm going to try and role model good safety, but I only have one glove. So I'm going to first just take a cotton ball and wipe off the bulk, and then make sure that you're just putting that right into a trash can, or I have my pile of paper and scraps over here, and I get as much of the bulk of it off onto paper that can just go into the trash instead of rinsing it off right into my sink. Okay, and then I'm going to just dip that in the water. Now I just need to get the vinyl off of the jar to reveal our masterpiece. I get as much off as I can, just pulling with my fingers, and then I will just come back in and use a tool where I need to. You're just going to wipe it down, get any extra adhesive from the vinyl off. And now just add cookies. Isn't that awesome? This would be great for, well, since this is aunties, this is for me, for when my niece and nephews come over, or a great gift for an aunt. This would be a fun way to let somebody know they're going to be an aunt. If you're pregnant, you could, for the first time, you could give them a cookie jar to let them know the big news. These would also be great gifts if you do mom or any of the other names. Great gifts for Mother's Day, for the holidays, birthdays, or just because. So that is how easy it is to etch on glass.